Love staying informed? Subscribe now and get unlimited access to local news, weather, and sports for just 99 cents a month for your first 3 months at inforum.news/join. Read every story, listen to every podcast, and download the apps that keep you informed and on the go 24 hours a day. So head to inforum.news/join right now to subscribe. What are you waiting for? Get 3 months of local news for just 99 cents a month at inforum.news/join.
This episode is presented by Dakota Resource Council. For nearly 50 years, DRC has worked across North Dakota to protect our land, water, and future.
Dakota Resource Council has definitely been shaping policy at the local, state, national levels. What role does DRC play in shaping that policy?
The industry is talking to people one at a time, and what DRC does is organize local groups and listen to people, and our voices are heard.
Become a member, volunteer, and take action, or donate today at drcinfo.org.
You're listening to Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. I'm your host, Rob Port. If I sound distracted, it's because I've been busy covering this story all morning. I'm joined by my co-host, Chad Oban.
He's right of center, I'm left of center, both sides of the political spectrum.
I think it's cathartic. I think it's a necessary and proper debate. I'm glad we're having it.
And honestly, we have to do better.
Okay, I don't know why I'm getting blamed for this, right? Welcome to Plain Talk, where on day 34 of the legislative session, they broke for crossover. The House was working late into the evening yesterday to finalize their bills, and we're headed to crossover. And I thought, actually, as we pause for crossover, the House passed the property tax bills. We're going to talk about, I'm trying to figure out the strategy of passing 3 property tax bills instead of 1. We'll talk about that. The Senate.
Rob, you're bearing the lead here.
Okay.
You're bearing the lead. The most important thing that happened, the most disappointing thing happened on the House floor yesterday is, as you know, my wife has been waiting to be an attorney, as has Senator Bell and Senator Poolman and so many others. And last night I learned that, one, they amended out the fact that former legislators can sit for the bar, and then they defeated the bill. And so it's a sad morning at the Oban house because Aaron Oban Esquire will likely never be.
Well, I think they were just trying to address North Dakota's attorney shortage.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it.
Although I will say I don't mind the idea of maybe a non-traditional path. I don't think that just letting people who have been in the legislature for 4 years sit for the bar is the way. But anyway,
agree to disagree, man. I think let them. Maybe it's just senators. Our guest, Representative Bahl, probably won't agree with that, but maybe just people who've been in the Senate for 4 years.
Oh man, that's kind of mean. He's not going to react to that. That was too mean, Chad. We do have Representative Landon Bahl on because I thought the crossover break might be a good time to discuss a bill of his, legislation of his that passed the House, which would move North Dakota to annual sessions. Now, we have the annual sessions debate every 2 years during the legislative session. It never goes anywhere. It has passed one. Proposals, I believe, have passed one house or the other in the past, and then usually they die. And it's a tough thing. I think the legislature are part-time citizen legislature. This isn't a full-time job for anybody there, although sometimes it probably feels like it. I think it's in a tough position because it's clear that North Dakota needs a little bit more from its legislature, but we're stuck in this gray zone. We're asking a little bit more. You're still asking it for part-time lawmakers, and there's really no appetite for going to a full-time legislature. So I don't know if that's how you view it, Landon. It seems like we're kind of stuck in a happy medium place.
Yeah, happy median is, it depends on who you talk to, right? First of all, thanks for having me on. And I do have to correct you guys. It's only taken me a full legislative session to convince people that my name is Bahl, not Bahl. So,
oh my goodness, I'm sorry.
I was just following Chad's lead.
Yeah, no, you're good. So it just took a full legislative session. People know my name now, so we're good. It's like I'm a freshman all over again. So
I should know because I have Representative Bahl and I have a personal connection that he may not know
right.
about.
Yeah,
His
no, I do.
Oh, you do know about this.
It would be your niece, right?
You took my niece to junior prom. That's right.
Yes, I did. That is, yes, 100%. I made that connection. It was towards the it was like last summer where someone told me, they're like, well, do you know who Rob Cord is? I go, well, yeah, I know what he does and stuff. And they're like, no, he's related to someone you took prom. I'm like, oh, that's, or someone you went to school with anyway.
Right. That's right. Amber'd like you to call her too, by the way. She's going to kill me. He's going to absolutely kill me. All right. I'm sorry. We're talking about annual sessions. Why, describe first of all, what your bill does.
Yeah, absolutely. So annual sessions really, as you guys said, it's been around for the notion, the idea has been around for probably a couple decades, right? I think someone told me, a reporter said, yeah, I've seen 30 bills. I go, really? I didn't know there's 30 bills. I looked at the bills in really the last decade, but the idea of annual sessions has been around for a long time. So I would bring some brand spanking new idea. I think I brought this bill, House Bill 1408, at the right time and the right place. I think people truly understand the impact, whether good or bad, however you think on term limits. There's going to be a severe impact to both chambers. And how do we work with that? But also, our state's in a super unique position in that we have tons of revenue coming in that we need to, I'd say we need to be better fiscal agents of, right? And annual sessions is truly going to help with that. So I was like, you know what? Also, as a business operator, sessions are they suck, to be quite frank. They are a lot of work. I'm usually working till 7 a.m. to midnight, 1 o'clock, whether it's house stuff, legislative stuff, or work. So I was like, here I am, someone that truly wants to be in the legislature, but it is ultra challenging. So I'm finding it challenging how many other people aren't even willing to toss their name into the hat, right? So ultimately, I think we garnered some good support as co-sponsors of this bill, and it passed the House overwhelmingly. So the thing has some legs. So I'm excited.
So can you talk a little bit about specifically what your bill does? It doesn't seem like it prescribes a 40 and 40 or a short season, short session, long session. It does allow some flexibility. So can you talk a little bit about that, and then maybe dive into a little bit deeper on why you think this will make it easier for citizens to serve rather than more difficult? Because I think I might have a different take than that.
No, and Chad, I'm here to hear all different takes because I truly enjoy having these conversations. I've had them with hundreds of people, and oftentimes when I go through my objectives of the bill, the person they sit there and they think, Jeff Hoverson of all people. I was talking to him the other day. He sat there. He goes, "Okay, I
Right.
get it."
Yeah.
So really, annual sessions do not read what you see online. Those people think this bill is trying to transition us, so we are going 80 days every single year. That's false. We can't do that. You guys know it. The citizens would have to vote on that. And we all know that the citizens think we twiddle our thumbs here, right? Truly. So we're not going to 80 days. Technically, what this says, and we can already do it ourselves, technically. However, no one's going to do it. So that's kind of why we need a House bill to do it, in my mind. And so it would technically say, all right, you guys can be in the legislature, be in the state capitol for a total of 70 calendar days each year. And again, we have to be very specific. I say 70 calendar days. That includes Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, essentially. However, you have to ensure that you get your 80 days of, as I say, gavel in days. That work needs to be completed within a total of 140 days, 70 calendar days each year. And so if you do the math, or if you look at a calendar, that means you're going to be able to do a 40-day gavel in session comfortably every year. And the bill is quite short. It's a page and a half roughly. And the reason it's short is because it gives the majority of the on how we're going to structure these annual sessions, gives that power to legislative management to figure out. And so if you look at the bills that came through in the past, they all had these strings attached, right? So I was like, all right, if we're going to truly try and get this moved forward with any legs, we can't attach any strings, because that's when you have people falling off of the wagon saying, no, can't do that. I don't like that. I disagree with that. We don't need a committee to tell us what bills can see the light of day. So really, this is in essence, a vague bill for the most part. Or if you talk to other people, they say it's a micromanaging bill. So it depends who you
But
talk
ledge
to.
management could decide, so you're in for 70 calendar days each year. But if you wanted to do gavel in 50 one year and 30 the next, ledge management has that flexibility. It doesn't have to be 40. Like if you have one session where there's a lot of stuff going on, you need to add a couple days where you're gavelled in, they would have the flexibility to do that.
Yeah, and I should for distinction for maybe our listeners who don't understand when we're talking about gavelled in versus calendar days, the North Dakota Constitution restricts legislative sessions to 80 days, but it only counts as a day towards that total if the legislature gavels in for a floor session. Now they can meet in committee, all the appropriations committees, judicial committees, all those things. They can meet as long as they don't gavel in for a floor session where they're giving up and down votes to bills. It doesn't count towards that 80-day total. So what Representative Bahl's bill is doing is talking about calendar days, understanding that within the calendar days he sets out, there's gavelled in days. I just wanted to make sure our listeners understood what we were talking about.
Rob, that's a good point. And another thing to note, some citizens believe, well, you're wasting days when you don't gavel in. Truly, some days we don't have any work for the floor to vote on, right? So when we come back from crossover, we could maybe have a couple bills to vote on, but it would be a waste of time. So when we come back, what is it, March 5th or whatever, we're not going to gavel in. It's going to be straight committee work the entire day. So that's a great point.
How about interim work? So is the interim work done in addition to those 70 calendar days, or is that done during the 70 calendar days?
Chad, you're absolutely right. It is done in addition to those 70 calendar days. Interim work truly does not go away. Interim work stays the same. And not only does it stay the same, it would become bolstered in this sense. So we are able to imagine if we could restructure our interim committees. I sat on higher education and in workforce for interim committees. Gosh, to be honest, I loved the people that chaired them were great. However, the work that we actually did, we could have met one time and gotten all that work done. So imagine if we structured those a little differently, where say we had the Representative Lauser has this great idea, and I truly agree. It's like, okay, what if you took the IB and L committees of the Senate and the House, and you made that one interim committee? So now it's really one voice moving forward. They can each pass it, and then come your annual session, that bill is ready. It doesn't need to be heard in committee because it's already essentially been heard. So imagine the better bills, the efficiency there that we could build. And these bills right now, you guys see it every day. We're ramrodding things through. We are not giving bills the time that they maybe need or deserve. And so this would help with that.
I think that's a really good point, because we are, and that's one of the downfalls. Everybody likes an open system, but one of the downfalls is we're getting a lot of chaff in with the wheat, and we're spending a lot of time getting bills that just don't have a lot of support or never going to go anywhere. They still have to go through the procedure, and that's taking time away from bills that frankly probably deserve more scrutiny to the point where we're seeing lawmakers stand up and say, well, I have to make a decision now, so I'm going to vote for this to keep the debate alive, even though that means sending it over to the other chamber to be debated. It's hard. I think it puts lawmakers in awkward positions. Chad could probably speak to that. Obviously I cover this stuff, but I've never served in the legislature. I've never had a family member serve in the legislature. Chad, obviously, his wife, Erin, served in the state Senate for years. And I'm wondering, does this seems like it would make it harder on lawmakers? Like it's because they still have to do the interim work. And now we have to have a legislative session every year. And I'm also worried, the Constitution requires an organizational session in December after the election. And then the legislature has to convene for the first time of the biennium in early January. But beyond that, it's all kind of up to the legislature. And I guess I'm thinking meeting every year, that means you have to organize a session. There's a lot that goes into that. And then lawmakers have to be in Bismarck every year, granted, hopefully for a shorter time. I don't know. I think I have some lawmakers look at this and say, in terms of taking time away from my personal life, this is worse.
I think, that's where it truly does come down to, I've talked to some lawmakers, they're like, I don't like it. And that's all they say. I don't like it. I don't want to be here every year. And so I will, Rob, I'll go through this with them and go, we're not necessarily going to be there longer. We really hopefully would not be. Is it possible that you could spend a few extra days every year? Potentially, but the goal that's not the goal. The goal is to basically, ultimately, my goal with this bill is to ensure that we are making better laws for the people, right? Not sending them over to the Senate or then sending them over to us and saying, okay, they'll fix it. Hopefully they'll fix it, right? That's not the goal. And really, when you think of, I got this interesting tidbit from Legislative Council. Over 60% of our body are covered in 3 professions. Number one being a farmer and or rancher. The second one being self-employed, and the third one being you're retired. Now, if we truly want to ensure that we have the best voices at the table, especially with term limits, how can we open this body up for your average person that may not be in a role like I am, where my boss is happy that I'm here, but someone was like, okay, yes, you're deciding to serve the people of the state. I'll let you off for 2 months instead of a third of a year. I truly do think that employers would look at that slightly different. I can go without employee A for 2 months, hopefully, right? But 4 months, it's like, gosh, what are we doing? We're getting behind in revenue or what sales, you name it. So that is the goal. However, there are people that are just like, I don't like it. I cannot speak to those people.
So I think all 3 of us would agree. I mean, the idea of having more diversity in terms of professions and age and, station in life would be really important. I don't think I 100% agree with that this would necessarily make it easier for employers. I mean, I'm thinking about as an employer myself, and it might be easier just to be able to just have somebody gone for 4 months rather than have somebody gone for 2 months and then get back in the groove and have them gone for 2 months. I think I could go either way on that. I don't know that it necessarily solves that problem as much, but I do think exploring different ways to get people more involved. I suppose the only way to ultimately solve this would be a full-time legislature, and nobody's going for that anytime soon, right? And so part of the other thing that's led this conversation and me supporting, frankly, annual sessions is the amount of bills that are getting introduced. I mean, we see legislators who are putting in 30, 35 bills, and then it clogs up the whole system. We lead to the last week, and just the way you guys have been churning out bills has led, from my perspective, to some bad votes, frankly, on different things just because they haven't been analyzed. But would you also, to go along with this, support some sort of cap on the amount of bills an individual legislator can do, or some, because I do think if the goal is to get better legislation and better bills passed, this is one step, but there has to be more than just that.
Absolutely. And that's why I supported Representative Hauser's bill, which unfortunately failed on the floor. My days are all mixed up. I think it was last week when his bill failed on the floor. However, I was talking to a legislator the other day that voted against my annual sessions bill, 1408, and he goes, Landon, this isn't going to decrease the number of bills. We're going to increase the number of bills. I go, well, then would you support, and this is a lawmaker that usually puts in a lot of bills. I go, would you support a cap to bills? And he stood back and he goes, I probably would, so I think it's completely up to legislative management. If there's a cap on 10 bills, think of it, make those 10 solid bills. You cannot tell me that someone putting in, I have a handful of bills. I started out with 3 bills, but I have carried these bills I've handheld them all the way through. I know the ins and the outs. I know all the arguments. I know these bills inside and out. I guarantee you other lawmakers do not know their 10, 20, 30 bills inside and out. And I think that's poor legislation. Why should it's just silly.
So
Choose fewer bills and know them.
we had Senator Weber on a couple of weeks ago, said pretty much the same thing. I think he said he had 4 bills that he put in that he considered, these are the 4, these are my priorities for the session. And I'm going to work really hard on getting those 4 bills, making them the best they can be and getting them across the line. He goes, I don't have time for more than that. Which I thought made a lot of sense. And I mean, so let's focus on maybe quality over quantity. One thing I really like, I thought that idea that you mentioned, and I think you attributed to Representative Lauser, who often has good ideas. The idea of allowing interim committees to do a lot of the work and get a bill ready for the House floor. The only thing I'm thinking of is those interim committees aren't necessarily going to be the committees that serve during the session, right? The interim committees serve in the interim. We have an election before the next session. Some of the people on those committees might be defeated. The new leaders are going to maybe assign different people to the committees. That seems like one obstacle. How would that work because I'm interested in it. I like the idea of, hey, if we're putting in all this work in the interim, why duplicate it during the session? But the problem is you may have people who weren't there during the interim.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Well, we deal with that issue right here and right now, right? For example, I had to carry a bill regarding the construction process called CMAR, Construction Management at Risk. Well, that came out of your interim government services committee, and unfortunately that failed on the floor. So you are going to have bills because you probably have people on that committee that are no longer here. And you have people on that committee that will be voting on it. So I think we deal with that right now. And I think it kind of works through itself. Either the legislators voting on it when it's coming across the desk, they say yay or nay, obviously. And so I think it would just ultimately, hopefully, in my little head, work the exact same way that it is now.
What do you think? One of the other things that Rob and I have talked about is the idea of being able to defeat bills in the committee. I get frustrated. I'll tell you, I'll watch a policy committee where you guys will, go through things for days and hours and hours and hours. You give it a 10-2 do not pass, and it goes to the floor and it passes. And it's like, what's the point of the policy?
Or the opposite, where
Right. Or, if we want to go down this even deeper, the policy committee says this is a great idea. You send it to a propes, and then a propes kills it. And they say, we don't mess with policy, but lots of policy happens in a propes. How would you feel about maybe beefing up the power of committees to defeat things or that kind of thing?
I would support that. I think that streamlines government. And it's a better use of our time. The efficiency is going to increase. Our work, the quality of our work is going to increase. The committees have the time to dive in. And if the committee doesn't, okay, great, you assign a subcommittee. And those 3 people are truly going to figure out the ins and outs of this bill, whether it's good legislation or poor legislation. And that's also gives power to your chair and your vice chair. Oftentimes, if you're not chair, you don't have any power on that committee, to be honest, for the most part. And if you're vice chair, great, you might be able to run the committee meeting when the chair's out. But really, it would give those people more power, and ultimately it would make those positions, people want those positions more. Everyone just wants to go to propes, right? And after seeing what a propes went through this past week, I don't think I want a propes anymore, give me a chair of a policy committee. So I really think that the committee should have that power. to be able to see if because again, the committee has all the time in the world in a perfect legislative session, has all the time in the world to truly vet it. The appropriations does not. When they schedule 15-minute hearings for bills, because that's the max, you cannot vet a bill in 15 minutes. And then you cannot vet a bill on the floor. It just doesn't work. And I think every legislator would agree.
And I think also people get worried about, well, then important bills are just going to get killed. I think you need to look at it. The legislature, I mean, we could put more scrutiny on the truly controversial is maybe the wrong word, but the consequential, maybe that's a better word, bills. We could put more scrutiny on them. Also, we need to realize that the legislature has an oversight role in state government. And sometimes, we'd be able to focus that a little bit on keeping tabs on. We had a huge debate over a sentencing bill in the Senate, where we've seen a lot of finger pointing back and forth between the Attorney General's office and the DOCR, and lawmakers are tasked with trying to discern who's right. How much time
we get to do these battles, these fights, these government fights.
So
is
so
that the job?
Right. And so I would like lawmakers to have more time to be able to dig in to a question like that, which is a consequential piece of policy, whichever side you agree with. I'd like to see them have more time to dig into that. I like your bill. I think it's heading in the right direction. I think we need whatever happens with it. I suspect it's going to fail. I hate to say that, but it's like,
no. Let's
Hasn't the Senate passed this in the past?
The Senate has passed it in the past. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but we all know both chambers like to kind of punt issues over to the other side. Like they don't want to make the other side do the dirty work, which actually was my column today about the sentencing issue and the property tax issue. It seems like we ended before crossover with each chamber wanting the other chamber to do the dirty work. So, well,
I don't know. You got Brad Beckedahl as one of the co-sponsors. I know this is something he's pushed on the Senate in the past. I mean, he's got some juice.
one thing I like about it is really flexible, and it gives legislative management a lot of latitude to do it, because, at the end of the day, we're dealing with human beings. You guys aren't robots. You get tired. You have a limited amount of bandwidth you can devote to this stuff. We have to be cognizant of that as well. But Representative Bahl, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you, guys. Appreciate the time.
Enjoy crossover.
This episode is presented by Dakota Resource Council. For nearly 50 years, DRC has worked across North Dakota to protect our land, water, and future.
Dakota Resource Council has definitely been shaping policy at the local, state, national levels. What role does DRC play in shaping that policy?
It's important for my people because we are grassroots people. We've always been grassroots people, Indigenous people, and having the tools and the resources that Dakota Resource Council can provide would up your game so much that, you can win and you can face these decision makers head on.
Become a member, volunteer, and take action, or donate today at drcinfo.org.
Hey friends, we've got a new way for you to participate in the show. You can now call us or text us with your questions, comments, or anything you want us to discuss on Plain Talk. Just give us a call or shoot us a text message at 701-587-3141. That's 701-587-3141. It's super easy. Leave your message, tell us your name and where you're from, and we might feature it on an upcoming episode.
Thanks for listening to Plain Talk. Now let's get back to today's episode.
Welcome back. Just finished up with Representative Landon Bahl, who we're now pronouncing his name correctly. Which, by the way, I'm terrible about. Because I am such a text first person. I like to read things more, and so I run into problems with names sometimes because I never hear them spoken out loud. As I'm reading, I pronounce them in my head a certain way, and then I find out, well, that was completely wrong. So,
Rob, it's been a while since we screwed up the pronunciation of somebody's name, so we were due.
We were due.
It was good that he corrected us, though. I mean, we could have went on that whole episode calling
everybody's always good natured about it as well. We got a little bit of feedback on our voicemail / text number, which, by the way, is 701-587-3141. If you ever want to leave a voicemail or a text, Representative Jonathan Worry said, "I do appreciate the content you produce, and am pleasantly surprised at how much accurate information you have." So that's Representative Worry from District 22 in Castleton. So, hey, there we go. endorsement. We got to put that on the t-shirt.
Yeah. Pleasantly surprised at how much accurate information you have. I mean, in today's day and age, is there any finer compliment?
It's a good one.
Yeah.
I was trying not to take it as a backhanded compliment that like I'm surprised that you two
You
are
two guys
accurate.
seem like you're full of it.
Right. You guys, every once in a while, you guys are right. So no, I don't think that's how he meant it at all. Also, by the way, I want to get to a quick announcement. We recorded the live show from in Bismarck at Peacock Alley. It was wonderful. This Sunday at 7 p.m., we're going to be dropping the full video of that for people who want to see it. It's going to be up at plaintalknd.com, which forwards to our YouTube page. YouTube URLs are kind of weird to do. So plaintalknd.com, you go there, takes you straight to our YouTube page. We had Senate Majority Leader David Hogue, House Minority Leader Zach Ista, former state senators Jessica Bell, Aaron Oban. So if you go there, you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can watch. We're going to have a lot of content there. We do short clips too, by the way. So maybe you didn't listen to a full episode or you don't have time. You can catch some of the highlights with the YouTube shorts. Check it out. That full episode of Plain Talk Live going live this Sunday at 7 p.m. So,
And Rob, not to brag, but it looks real awesome. It looks real awesome.
Matt makes us look. He imbues our content with a level of professionalism that perhaps transcends our talent level.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think if people like to, see a spouse attack her great husband, watch the Aaron Oban interview.
While other people sit around awkwardly.
Yeah. I don't know if I told you this, but afterwards, my mother-in-law was there and she came up. She's like, I talked to Aaron about being nicer to you on the air. And she's not like on the air, like beyond that, whatever, you're on your own, buddy, but you need to be careful on the air. So it was fun.
We had so much fun at that live episode. We're looking forward to doing more of those in the future. All right. First things first, let's talk about the same-sex marriage resolution. And I want to put forward a hypothesis. I saw somebody, in fact, our mutual friend Jamie Selzler posted on social media, kind of a, they can't pass funding for school lunches, but although they did do a slight bump in,
it's like eight more people qualify, I think, with that one. Yeah.
Well, it's probably more than that, but it's not nearly enough. But his argument was, they couldn't vote for that, but they did vote to urge the U.S. Supreme Court to, to overturn the same-sex marriage ruling. And, I have a reason. I think the reason for that, Chad, is a lot of the lawmakers, it starts with the voters. I don't think a lot of lawmakers are gonna lose, even with the polling that shows how many people support school lunches. I don't perceive that a lot of these people are at risk over the school lunch bill. I think they would be at risk over the same-sex marriage vote. I think that's just the political reality in North Dakota right now.
So I think, beyond the politics of
I'm not defending it.
No, I understand that. Your column said as much. I think the politics of this, I think that sort of vote from a political interest is probably a vote from 10 years ago. I think people are by and large over this issue. I think by and large people are okay with same-sex couples. But I will tell you, everybody should go and watch Austin Foss's speech on the floor of the House.
If you need help locating, I put the full speech in my column about it. So if you want to track it down that way.
It was heartbreaking. I mean, to have somebody, and kudos to him to have the guts to stand up and look these people in the eye and saying, you're talking about me and my husband.
Well, and to make them feel uncomfortable, to make it personal in the room. When I wrote about it, Austin Foss is exactly the sort of person we want in North Dakota. He's the sort of person that we have been passing all manner of policy to try to keep, to attract to North Dakota or to keep in North Dakota. He was born here. He got an education here. I think he lived part of his life elsewhere, but for the most part, he's been here. He's a young guy. He's a married guy. He's a young guy, so he's at the beginning of an architecture career that sounds pretty promising. But for some reason, we think it's important because he's in the LGBTQ community we make it important to make him somebody like that feel like they're unwelcome in our state. And it blows my mind, and I have zero patience for it. And I'm just completely disappointed by that vote.
And the fact that he pointed out, I don't go into your church, I don't go into your house, I don't do these things and tell you who to love and how to live it doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect me. And it goes back to the bigger picture. These guys up at the Capitol want to be involved in every aspect of our life. This is not conservative. I mean, I saw some libertarians online basically saying, yeah, this is a terrible vote. This is a contract. Two adults being in a contract is not for the legislature to determine or not to determine. But the bigger message here, we need workforce here. We need workforce here, and we shouldn't care if people are part of the LGBTQ community or not part of that community. We want to be welcoming to all folks here because it makes our community stronger. And I also think about, like, I don't know Austin's husband, but I bet they're great neighbors. And I've had some straight couples who are married. They're terrible neighbors. And so, I mean, we should be welcoming folks like Austin into the legislature and whatever. And that resolution was nothing but hate.
My favorite part of his remarks is kind of acknowledging a libertarian view on this. He said, I'm quoting him now, you have every single right to believe that your creator does not want me to be happy, that your creator does not want me to love who I love. And that's your right. But I also have every right to know that my God loves me for who I am. I have every right to know that my God did not make a mistake when he made me. So he's not saying you have to like me. He's not saying that I'm here to condemn you because you have views about who I am. He's saying you're allowed to live your life that way. All he's saying is just let me live mine.
Right.
Let me live my life.
And he's a better person than I, because I want to condemn every one of those people who voted for that thing, because I do think it is sending a message to a lot of vulnerable people in this state who need to feel welcome here and should feel welcome. No matter who they are, they should feel welcomed here.
Well, and it's a pointless thing. John Roberts is not sitting
Right.
around in Washington, D.C. saying, oh, we better get on this. By the way, it accomplishes nothing. The Supreme Court can't just reach down. They have to have a case before them.
So
To do it.
it's a messaging bill. We've talked about messaging bills that are just to, help people in a life. This is a messaging bill to hurt people.
Yeah, no, it's as I wrote, it's intended to make certain citizens feel unwelcome, just like the bathroom bill where we can't have kids washing their hands together, just like the book bill where you can't, if you think that we shouldn't be locking Kurt Vonnegut books up in a cabinet like they're Hustler magazines, that you are a pornographer and a groomer. It's about making certain people feel unwelcome, making North Dakota an unwelcoming place, which drives me nuts. Because
it drives me nuts. And I saw somebody online, and I think you pushed, maybe it's on your comments, who said, North Dakota's a cold, dreadful place, whatever. And then you throw this. I don't believe North Dakota's a terrible place to live. I love North Dakota just like you do. And I love North Dakota if we welcome all people.
Admittedly, our weather is an acquired taste.
Well, I mean, but have you looked outside the last couple of days?
It's been beautiful the last couple of days.
Although I will tell you, the day it rained in Bismarck in the middle of winter was a little weird and a little treacherous out there.
I love North Dakota. I love North Dakota people. I think even some of the people that voted for this bill, I think are capable, have good hearts. I wish they had aspired to something better than this and had a little bit more courage, because I know what's in some of their hearts. And I know their hearts aren't with this, and they decided to vote for this, and it was a political calculation, and I wish they'd had a little bit more courage to stand up, especially after we just came through a primary season where we proved that you don't have to vote with this stuff. You can't vote blind.
Which is worse? Which is worse, being bigoted or voting like a bigot because it's politically convenient?
They're both bad. And I'm not trying to excuse anybody. I'm just saying there's a lot of people that could be doing better.
Yeah, and I will tell you, again, on social media, saw people of the LGBTQ community talking about specific legislators they're friends with.
Yeah.
And how much it hurt them to have a friend of theirs basically say your relationship's not legitimate.
I hope they reach out. And respectfully have a conversation. Make it personal for them. Stand and that's what Representative Foss did is he stood in that chamber and he made it personal and uncomfortable for every person in that chamber. And if they felt uncomfortable, then they should think of why it felt uncomfortable, because you're telling this person that because of some immutable property about who they are is somehow wrong and ought to be illegal.
And 50 legislators looked at their colleague Austin Foss and said, "You're less than me." 50.
I don't know what else to say about it. But Representative Foss is we had him on the podcast not that long ago. I was super impressed with him. Although he was,
you said you called Travis Fink a hero recently, and I agree with that. I think Austin Foss standing up in that environment as a person who's been a legislator for 2 months and standing up to that, it's a hero move, man.
Yeah, Representative Foss is not probably somebody I would vote for on policy. He probably votes in a way that I wouldn't want him to vote most of the time because he's a liberal Democrat. As a human being, I think he's a wonderful person, and I'm glad he's in North Dakota, and I hope he never leaves.
Agreed. And I hope these kind of things don't have other people like Austin Foss leaving the state because they don't feel welcome here.
Okay. What else do we want to talk about? The House passing 3 property tax bills.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think? I mean, I think part of that, and I know you reference a column, I haven't read it yet, but I do think there's a little bit of the House. We don't want to, like, why didn't they just kill the Louser bill? Like, I know they all do little different things, but are they going to get to the Senate and combine all these bills? I mean, or is the Nathy governor's bill where it's at?
Yeah. So the 3 bills. Do you feel like because there's the Nathy bill that incorporates Governor Armstrong's ideas for property taxes? That's obviously the one Governor Armstrong supports. There's the Louser bill, and we had Representative Louser on the show, and he described his bill. And then there's the Weiss bill. Do you perceive the Weiss bill as being compatible with the other 2?
So I don't know enough about the Weiss bill, frankly. I mean, I think what's going to be interesting once it gets to the Senate. We heard Senator Hogue at Peacock Alley talk about he is much stronger on caps and making sure there's no sort of off-ramps than I think the House is. And so what is the Weiss bill, Louser bill? The caps are going to be the fight here from my perspective, even if you trickle a little stuff in.
That's funny because I was looking at it thinking the caps were the low-hanging fruit. Like everybody agrees we're going to need caps.
Everybody agrees we're going to need caps. I think the fight is going to be what the caps look like, right? I mean, Hogue basically was saying he would like 2%.
The fight is going to be whether or not it's an actual cap.
Right. And if the voters can waive it and for how long.
Well, don't forget, we had Governor Armstrong on the show as well, and he wasn't real. At the time, the cap that was in his preferred bill, 1176, Nathy's bill, it allowed voters to opt out for 10 years. Now, that's since been narrowed to 4 years. I guess I don't know. I have a feeling the governor probably still doesn't like that. If the governor had wanted them to be able to set aside the cap, I feel like that would have been part of the original proposal.
I suspect he likes 4 better than 10, but I'm not sure that he loves 4.
I think he's more aligned with where Hogue is at, and I agree. If the cap isn't strong, that cap has to be ironclad. And if it's not strong, the whole thing's going to fall apart.
If a local taxing unit and the voters of that taxing unit want to waive it for a few years, why shouldn't they have that ability to do it?
Yeah, the problem.
I mean, maybe it's not 4 years, maybe it's 2, right? Or maybe it's something like that. But
I thought it was Representative Carla Rose Hansen opposed the bill. She opposes the caps. And she makes the local control argument. Why should the legislature be telling the locals what to do with their spending? I think I don't have the exact quote, but she said something along the lines of, it makes it seem like we don't trust the local governments. And I wanted to write a column like, we don't trust them. And by the way, they haven't earned our trust. And I would extend that in some ways to voters at the local level who if they had been voting differently, could have taken care of this problem locally. But now you've kicked it up to the legislature. If we really want this to work, we can't just continue to trust that the locals are going to do the right thing, because they won't. They've shown that.
But again, I think we're painting with pretty broad. I mean, I'm for a cap. I think there needs to be a cap, but I also think that we have to be careful that we're not disparaging every local political sub in the same way.
Fair.
And so I think some
but there's a lot. I mean, there's a reason we're here. There's a reason why we're here.
Right.
It's because a lot of those locals have not been listening to their voters.
But I mean, why should this, if a group of people in a political sub decides they want to go over the cap and they vote for that, why should the state legislature tell them they can't? I mean, I think this is sort of a philosophical
property
discussion.
taxes, to control property tax, because you can make that argument every time the local thing comes up. That's the argument. Why should the legislature tell them to do this? Well, sometimes we have a compelling interest to tell them to do this.
But it's just on my property taxes or my community's if I want to build a water park in Bismarck, North Dakota, and we're going to raise property taxes to do it, I think there is a conversation to have about if my community wants that we should be able to vote on it.
Bonding issues aren't a part of this, though, right?
That's true. That's let's be clear. I'm not bonding. I am not for a bond for a water park in Bismarck. I would be opposed to that.
Well, I just, yeah. I mean, but that's the problem is you say local control.
Right.
And the thing is well, what does that mean? Because sometimes clearly we don't want local control.
You and I've talked a lot about this. Everybody is a hypocrite when it comes to local control. We love local control until my local government does something I don't like. I'm guilty of it. You're guilty of it. Everybody's guilty of it.
I am not necessarily against a pressure relief valve on the cap. 10 years is way too much.
Agreed. I agree 100%.
I think 4 years is too much.
But something a year or two, I think, if they want to do that, and if they do it and the voters vote for it and people don't like it, then they don't do it anymore.
I would, if they want to set it aside, I'd make them have to go to the voters every year that they want to break the cap.
And I do think general election, make sure it's an election people are aware of, make sure that there's you can't be doing the special stuff.
They play some games where they schedule the votes at weird times to get certain turnouts, and let's put it in front of the voters where they're paying it the most attention.
Okay, Rob, let's make this determination. I say 2 years. You say you want 1 year. Would you agree to 2 years?
I could live with 2.
All right, here we got it done.
Yeah, if only you and I had a vote.
Yeah,
which we do not. I have a feeling even that 4 years probably. I hope so, because it does seem like the Senate is going to be tougher on the cap. But the other question is, I think it was a mistake because the Louser bill and all three of those, the Wise bill, the Louser bill, and the Nathy bill, are all very different approaches. And I don't understand why the House did that, other than they just didn't. I mean, narrowing that down and building a consensus around one was going to be a lot of work. And I feel like they just punted.
And I think that
make anybody mad, and we'll let the Senate be the bad guys.
And the Senate just had a vote on ag land in terms of property taxes, and it went down very closely. And I can't remember
the Senate killed all of their all the consequential property tax bills. So the only thing that's left really are the 3 bills the House sent the Senate. So and that's another, I think, mistake the House made, because the ball is entirely in the Senate's court now.
Yeah, and it obviously come together at the end with a conference committee of some time. But again, this is the one issue that Governor Armstrong is really engaged in as well. I mean, you don't hear a lot of Armstrong plans on other policies. I think he did that on purpose. It's his first term. He wants the legislature to do the thing. So he's going to be in that room. You're going to have the Senate. You're going to be the House. I think there's still people in the House who would much rather see an income tax than a property tax cut. So I think it's going to be an interesting ride here.
Yeah, I'm glad they took by the way, for a hot moment, the Nathy's bill had an income tax cut in it as well. That got amended out.
$50 million. $50 million.
And again, I'm not against that. Voted on it. The property tax rate is complicated enough. Let's not put in. If we want to do something on income taxes, we can debate that separately.
And I think we're also crossover is always an interesting time, because you have legislators claiming poverty while at the same time, like, appropriating huge sums of money on things. You've got sort of that yin and yang, depending on the issue. We're either rich or poor. And it happens every session. It's nothing new.
And the problem is they all have different priorities. I mean, for them, it's like, well, we don't have a lot of money, but I really think school lunches are important. Or I don't have a lot of money. I think that locking up everybody longer in prison is an important priority, which, by the way, was the other bill I wrote about in my column this morning about punting. Is it felt to me like the Senate kind of punted the sentencing bill over to the House. And it's a little more subtle, but when I was watching that debate, which by the way had a completely cringy comment from Senator Delzer about Senator Yana Myrdal. The guy, there's a little bit of back.
Not Delzer, Dever?
Dever. I don't
Yeah.
know why I said Delzer.
I miss it. What did he say?
So everybody refers to our approach over the last 10 or so years as the Norway model of corrections, which is kind of more focused on treatment and stuff like that. And it's supposedly taken from, I don't think it's really fair because we're not doing things exactly like Norway, but I think philosophically, we've kind of adopted some things from the Scandinavian. So anyway, they call it the Norway model. And so that came up during the debate. It's saying, well, we have the Norway model. And Senator Dever stood up during his speech, he says, well, when you say, Norway model, I don't think of our corrections. I think of the senator from District 19. Well, the senator from District 19 is Yana Myrdal, who is an immigrant from Norway. And so his idea is that she's a model, as in like modeling clothes or something like that model. It was just super cringe.
So he was trying to make a funny compliment of the good senator from the Northeast, and it was a little uncomfortable.
Well, she rose and spoke after it and was kind of nonplussed by it a little bit. And I mean, I don't know. I like a little bit of levity. These things get serious sometimes. So a little joking around. I thought that one, and
yeah, I missed it.
Dever really didn't help his cause. I mean, he talked, I think, in total for a half an hour.
Yeah, there was too much talking. There's too much talking during that debate for sure.
Too much. But what was interesting to me was some of the lawmakers who spoke for a much shorter amount of time stood up and basically, said, well, let's keep the debate alive. Let's keep the debate alive. What I was hearing was, I don't want to vote against this because I really don't want the Attorney General to be on talk radio telling everybody that I love criminals.
Or just have Drew yell at him in the hallway.
Right.
We didn't want that either.
Yeah. So I think they kind of punted. I have a feeling that similar legislation that died in the House last time around. So that's kind of what it's looking at. But the big open question is, if the House punts too, do they put it in Governor Armstrong's hands? And what does he do with it? Does he veto it? The 18 votes against it in the Senate, if those stood strong, would be enough to sustain a veto.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fascinating if this thing does get through. I think he vetoes it. I mean, I don't. I mean, depending on what it looks like, but I don't think you pick this fight and stand up for, not pick this fight, but have such a different perspective on a policy area he's an expert on,
right? And
then not veto it, not use the pen.
This is an issue that is squarely in Armstrong's wheelhouse. It's a policy area that he's, throughout his career, when he served in the state Senate, when he served in Congress, he's been passionate about. And he's given no indication at all that as the Attorney General has perpetrated a withering attack on the integrity of one of his cabinet officials, Colby Braun, the head of Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, has stood by him and as they've offered really no indication at all that he'd be willing to compromise on this. So I have to think that if the House sent it, and maybe they will, maybe if they think Armstrong will veto it, then they'll make him be the bad guy. And boy, would that set off a very interesting political situation.
Yeah, and I can't remember which one of the senators stood up, and it might have been Magrum. I can't remember. But one stood up and said, I called my sheriffs, I called my state's attorneys, and I called my whatever.
That was Magrum.
And every one of them had a different opinion on this.
There's no unity on this, which by the way was why I thought Senator Dever's call for a study, I think, is the right. I mean, a lot of people say that because they want to kill it, right? That's the other way. Death by fiscal note, death by study.
But this came from the Interim Judiciary Committee. I assume there was a study that led to this bill.
Could be, but given when you have the Department of Corrections saying one thing and the Attorney General's office saying the opposite, frankly, clearly we have to do something to reconcile those two things. I don't know. The one key thing in all of this, I have yet to see it demonstrated to me that another state, Arkansas or Florida or California or somewhere, has implemented, or the federal system has implemented truth in sentencing where we're requiring them to be there a certain amount of time, and it's led to better outcomes, less recidivism, lower crime, whatever. I asked the attorney general about it, didn't have a good answer. So if we
And
don't,
it's become a difficult issue for folks to vote against because the attorney general has framed this as being weak on crime, or if you don't vote for this bill, you like the guy who's, in a police chase and running people down by accident.
or like the guy who punched the cop in the jaw or
Right.
whatever.
And nobody likes those people. Nobody wants that, right? That's not what this conversation is about. It's a different way to handle those things.
But the weakness in his argument is, where's the evidence that we're going to reduce that sort of crime? I don't think, I mean, one of his things is mandatory sentence minimums for certain time, like assaulting an officer or fleeing an officer, but it's like 30 days. And I don't know anybody. I mean, if you're at the point where you're going to punch a cop or you're going to hit the gas instead of pulling over when a police officer lights you up, you're not thinking about another 30 days in jail. You're not going through like, oh, I better think about what the sentencing implications are.
But the public's not going to think about it that deeply, right? I mean, so if this is something that ends up getting into a political campaign or the political sphere, it's going to be, are you locking up the bad guys or are you easy on those people? And then horror stories are easy, right? I mean, Murdahl had some of them and they're easy to come by. They don't tell the stories with a 99.9% who've had, gotten rehabilitation, gone back and been, those aren't going to get as much publicity.
Because they can have anecdotes of the horror story about somebody gets released from prison, didn't serve 85% of their time and goes out and commits another crime. It's hard to have an anecdote of somebody who gets out of prison, got treatment, got an education, and then just returned to their life and didn't do anything.
Yeah, is working and being a model citizen and helping society, which is the goal, right? I mean, that's what we want.
And also we talk about these things like they're one-to-one. Like one is directly causal to the other. One thing we never talk about is North Dakota during the oil boom. We got a lot younger. We got a lot more male. And guess who commits the most crime in this country? Young men, unfortunately. I mean, that's just a reality. So when we bring more men to North Dakota and our age gets younger, we're going to see more crime.
What I also thought is really interesting, so we hear so much about this crime increase going on. I mean, Drew's been the attorney general, the U.S. attorney during that whole time. And so it can't be just this policy. There's got to be, like you mentioned, different variables going on out there that's leading to these increases.
I mean, the pandemic's not that far in our rearview mirror. That was a weird black swan cultural event. And I think we're still grappling with the impacts it has across all policy areas, including the criminal justice system. So I don't think now's the time for this. And I'm not against further study more. And let's try to reconcile. I wish we had passed a law that would force the DOCR and the attorney general to get in a room and figure it out.
Yeah. You guys, you have to come up with an agreement about how much this is going to cost.
Also, how about just, you have to come up with an agreement on a shared facts.
Yeah.
What are the facts of this? Because that has been terrible. All right. We're going to put a pin in it. Yeah.
You want to put a pin in it? Because I want to just mention one other issue really quick.
Let's do it.
Disappointed that universal meals didn't pass this week. I mean, I think that there is some good momentum. The public certainly wants that.
It did.
The price tag.
As we mentioned, the House did move it up incrementally. It's not going to have a huge impact. It's something.
Yeah, they went from 200% of poverty to 225% of poverty is now eligible for free meals. That's what's in the bill, in the DPI budget right now. And without increasing the amount of money, because not all the money was used 2 years ago. So that's something. It's not nothing. But I think part of the thing that you and I have talked about, and you've hit on, this is money in the pocket of working parents in the state that I think we missed an opportunity here.
Representative, when he was talking about one of, not the DPI budget, but one of the specific, I think it was Representative Hattlestead's bill. Stood up and made that argument explicitly. In fact, I was going to text him and charge him a royalty for stealing my.
But it is. I mean, it's interesting because the people really pushing this the most are people who just really want to feed kids, and I sort of call us the do-gooders. sometimes the do-gooding isn't enough of a reason, and so maybe not enough leaning into that economic messaging. And you put out your finger on that early on in this conversation.
Yeah. Well, I think the efficiency, I think that there's an argument that sometimes we think of efficiency as just spending less money, and I don't know that that's always the case. There's efficiency to be bought here by just getting rid of the means testing and just saying, if you go to school in North Dakota, you're getting lunch. Yeah. Period. I think it makes the lives more efficient. It's one less thing that parents have to worry about. It's one less expense on their books. It's one less thing that school administrators have to worry about. All they got to worry about now, if we did this, is just deliver the meal. We're talking about efficiency and everything at the federal level. Again, that doesn't always have to mean cutting costs. Sometimes that can be, this is something very simple that the government can do to make a lot of people's lives easier.
And I think this is one of those issues that is missing the economic and age diversity in the legislature. I mean, you watch the House Appropriations Committee. That was not sort of it was not, I don't want to say it wasn't, it was based on sort of dated rhetoric around.
Not a lot of people in that room have My School Bucks accounts paying school.
Right. I mean, and so, in hearing story, well, kids go down to the C store and eat lunch. Yeah, we wouldn't pay for their lunch. What is that? What does that have to do with what we're talking about here? So it is one of those places where it felt like if there was more sort of parents of kids at home in the room, it would have been a little bit different conversation, but it is what it is. I wish they would have passed it. I think it would have been good policy.
You think there's any chance that comes back at any point?
I think that there's a chance we will see it on the ballot at some point. I'm of the opinion that, at some point the public is so supportive of something and you run it through the legislature 2 or 3 times like they've done, at some point you just have to let the people vote on it.
I'm not a fan of the initiated measure process, but it does exist. I feel like if they just took Hattelsted's bill and put that on the ballot, I would vote for that. I would vote.
And here's the other thing. You also have the goofiness of fiscal notes. I mean, they're talking about the bill 2 years ago. There's $6 million appropriated, and then they didn't use all that money, and that was a criticism of it. Well, if they wouldn't have appropriated enough money, then there would have been criticism because people were held out, right? And so I get a little frustrated when they say, well, they didn't even use all the money we appropriated in the first place. Well, but what if we would have not had enough? So I think there's a chance that the voters get a chance at this if there's groups that step up and want to do it, and I certainly would support it.
Yeah, definitely. All right, we are now definitely going to put a pin in it. I really appreciate it. Remember, always you can leave us a voicemail or send us a text message, 701-587-3141. Those have been so fun to get. We've been getting a few more of them now. Only one voicemail so far, but I mean, it's super easy. So while you're listening, if it's in your phone, just put Plain Talk in your phone. And you can just shoot a quick text message. We'll see it. It's great. Also, don't forget, Sunday at 7 p.m. on our YouTube channel. plaintalknd.com. That's a URL, but it's gonna shoot you straight over to our YouTube channel. You can first of all, subscribe to the channel. You can get all our video content. You'll get all our episodes, the audio versions. We also do great clips, highlights from the shows you get caught up on. Those are really great. But we're going to be dropping the full video of our live episode from Bismarck, which is a lot of fun, a lot of production value. Matt just did a wonderful job.
It looks so damn good.
His crew did a wonderful job there. Just great professional people, wonderful to work with. We had Senate Majority Leader David Hogue, House Minority Leader Zach Ista, former state senators Jessica Bell, Aaron Oban. It was just a great conversation overall. Tons of fun. That's coming out on Sunday, 7 p.m. If you go to plaintalknd.com now, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel now, and you'll get the alert when new content comes out. So be sure to do that. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk again. That's it for today on Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. Plain Talk is a production of Forum Communications Company. Got a question, comment, or suggestion? Leave us a voicemail or send us a text message at 701-587-3141. That's 701-587-3141. If you haven't subscribed to Plain Talk yet, you can find us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. For those of you who are already hooked, give us a rating or review. And don't forget to share or tell a friend. Special thanks to my co-host Chad Oban, and from myself and everyone at Plain Talk, thanks for listening. took my niece to junior prom. That's right.
Yes, I did. That is, yes.
Amber'd like you to call her too, by the way. She's going to kill me.